but my uncle was too proud not to. So I got a scholarship to move to Italy. I moved to Italy in 2000. Spent time drinking Barolos, Brunellos, Barbarescos, all my favorite Italian wines. And when I came back from university there in Italy, I stumbled across Argentina in my studies. Thought Argentina was intriguing and tried a Malbec. And although Malbecs are, at that point in time, were a little rough and rustic, I thought they had great potential. So my family, we're from Colorado. I grew up on a cattle ranch in southern Colorado. So, you know, a cowboy, and decided I would take the Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid trail down to Argentina, skip going back to Bolivia and getting shot in front of a bank, and literally put down some roots in Argentina. So I moved to Argentina, interned with 3 different wine industry related companies. So a vineyard management company, a wine products company selling barrels, yeast, enzymes, and such to wineries. And then also worked with a United Kingdom wine consulting company called Cellar World. And so over the process of looking at about 500 different vineyards, my father and I purchased one of the oldest vineyards in Argentina, and quite possibly the world, that was founded by Tiburcio Banegas, who founded the Trapiche winery, which at one point in time was the largest winery in the world. So in the 1860s, Tiburcio Banegas decided that he was going to go to France, collect French rootstock, cork, and oak. He came back and planted in Argentina. So I bought one of his original vineyards that was planted in 1881. So we have vines well over 100 years old. We're going to be trying one of those wines today. You know, legends of gold, you know, oak forests that are 150 years old, cork forests that are 150 years old. So, you know, property with great history and great wines.
But your family now has wineries in 3 different areas, is that right?
So we have vineyards. We control, we either own or we have long-term leases with over 10 different vineyards. In Barrancas, Maipú is where our main estate is, but we also have a vineyard up in Cafayate, Salta, which is where the Torontos will come from. And then we have vineyards down in the Uco Valley, a cooler climate zone as well, that we either do single varietals or we do some blending through single varietals. So lots to play with that give us great wines and, you know, really easy drinking, approachable wines. So how we got to Gauchezco, which means Gaucho way of life or Gaucho style. So if you treat the land well, it'll treat you well. We're not chemist winemakers where we'll add enzymes to get more strawberry flavor or, you know, X. We really want to truly just basically, you know, I guess give you what the vine gives us. So we take very good care of our vineyards. So if you take care of your vines, they give you great wines. And so really a lot of our work goes into making sure that our vines are happy and healthy, and we maintain them well. So, yeah, so, you know, again.
And that's the Gaucho philosophy, isn't it? That you look after the planet and it gives you back great fruits. And this is clearly one of them.
Exactly. Well, as we all know, wine is a story, and it's more fun to go to your friend's house with a bottle of wine or have a virtual tasting and, you know, kind of explain what a wine is, as opposed to just say this is a Merlot from, you know, the Rhone Valley or X, you know. So great history. So the Gauchos were, you know, fundamental in the development of South America. So when General San Martin came to Buenos Aires the second time, because Buenos Aires, the first time they founded Buenos Aires, the Indian tribes, the Native American tribes were cannibals, and they basically wiped all the conquistadors out. So the second Buenos Aires they started from, the Gauchos were the ones that helped General San Martin, whether you like it or not, conquer South America. And so they were the ones that actually helped them go up over the Andes from Mendoza and go all throughout South America. And so Tiburcio Banegas in the 1860s saw that wine was going to be the new future, because prior to that, Mendoza was a stopping point for the cattle drive from the Pampas in Argentina, the Pampa grass, really lush grasslands, to take the cattle over the Andes into Santiago. Fantastic. Well, when the British put in the railway system, a 6-month trip took now 2 weeks. And so the economic driving factor for Mendoza being a cattle stop was no longer there. So then again, Tiburcio Venegas had the foresight. He's one of the forefathers of Argentine winemaking to go to France, collect rootstock, come back and plant. One of the great things that Argentina has in comparison to other places in the world is we have 300 days of sunshine and pretty dry climate. We sit in a high desert, you know, our vineyards are between 1,000 and 1,500 meters, except for the Torontos we'll be trying today comes from about 2,000 meters. So really high vineyards.
We'll see the characteristics of the ground and everything, the climate coming through, and see some of these wines, I think, today.
Exactly.
Have a show of hands. Anybody in our tasting today who's been to Argentina? Ooh, oh, 2. No, I haven't either, and it's somewhere I would be really interested to go. So, hey, maybe we should do a trip out there when we're all allowed to travel again.
We would love to see you, and we'd have a big barbecue on. We did a study. We did a study when my father and I, were thinking about what we wanted to be known as a winery, and so we did a study. What do people think of when they think of Argentina? They think of football. They think of the Argentine beef. They think of tango. They think of the Andes, and they think of gauchos. And so the Gaucho being the Argentine equivalent of the American cowboy, that set real close to home and in my heart. And so we decided that we came up with Gauchezco, which is a romantic literary term, again, that means Gaucho way of life or Gaucho style. So, the Gauchos, sleep under the stars and they sleep on the ground. And so they're truly connected with nature and the earth. And so that's something we wanted to continue as a philosophy.
Sounds great. Okay, thank you, Eric. That was all really interesting, but I think we now need to start tasting. So we're going to taste the sparkling Pinot Noir first. Now, one thing I just want to say is, I don't know if everybody knows this, but 24 people a year on average are killed by champagne corks that are popping. So whenever you take the wire off the cork, don't ever let your finger off the top, because it can just explode. And yet, as I say, 24 people on average a year are killed by flying champagne corks. Pretty good way to go, frankly, but just be careful. So sparkling Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir obviously is one of the grapes in Champagne, but I'm not sure that I've tasted a pure sparkling Pinot Noir before.
Well, just to give you a little rundown about this, everyone. So we own some of the largest Pinot Noir vineyards in Argentina, and when we first started Gauchezco, we had no intentions of really making a Pinot Noir sparkling. So we sold most of our Pinot Noir to Chandon or a couple other champagne houses or sparkling houses in Argentina. And then we decided, why would we not make a great sparkling Pinot Noir, at least half the cost of Chandon. So you're going to get that nice salmon tint. This is being grown in our vineyards in our main estate. And then we do pick some of our other Pinot Noir in the Uco Valley, just to kind of give it a little blend between warm and cool climate zones. So for me, this is a really easy drinking Pinot Noir sparkling. I get strawberries, raspberries, and rose petals. All our wines are going to have great acidity. Great acidity is going to give you, have you salivate and want to drink more. So all these wines are great to drink on their own, but also pair very well with food. Again, we want these wines to be really approachable, easy drinking, not too tannic, not unapproachable. And I'm sure that Steve has some great cheese ideas or wine or food pairings as well. Personally, I just like to drink this on the patio.
Exactly. Well, I have a guest in my studio tonight, and I've just got a noise from the other end of the room. So that's obviously a thumbs up. So beautiful color, absolutely beautiful color. As you say, salmon pink. I'm getting the ripples, not so much strawberries, but we're eating strawberries later tonight, so this will definitely go with them, I'm sure. But Steve, am I right to pair this with fruit?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm getting to the point where I see most of you guys more than I see my own children on Zoom these days, which is getting a bit worrying. So my ideal pairing with this particular wine
Stevie, is still there?
Oh, can you hear me? Hello?
Is everybody frozen? Have I frozen?
Steve, I can hear you.
Can somebody put their thumbs up if you can hear me? Right, it's you, Penny.
Yeah, we're back.
Right. To my mind, the perfect pairing with this amazing sparkling Pinot Noir is a lot of sunshine and some good friends. They're the best things to pair it with, without a doubt. But building what Penny says, much as cheese is my other great passion in life besides wine, this is a fruit wine. You're absolutely right, Penny. And it's summer fruits, it's strawberries, it's raspberries, those types of things. You don't want black fruits, you want those nice red coloured fruits with this. Or something that I've tried with it, and I hate it because I don't like the thing I'm pairing it with, and that's rhubarb. But my wife loves rhubarb, and so nice cooked rhubarb with this goes really, really nicely because you've got the acidity that works well in both of them. If you are going to have cheese with this wine, there's two styles of cheese I'd have. One is a soft, creamy, very fresh goat's cheese. Two examples I could think of in Britain that would work really well. One is Rosary, which comes from down on the edge of the New Forest, which can come either covered in ash or in herbs or just au naturel, which is gorgeous. Another one is called Cremette, which comes from the Sharpham estate just outside Totnes in Devon, and that is really creamy. But the best cheese to have with this, and this shows how life has a way of coming around in circles, we go to Italy. There's a cheese that you can buy in, certainly you can buy it in Whole Foods, if anyone's near a Whole Foods in sort of Richmond or Kensington or somewhere, or you can get this in some Waitrose, which is a cheese called La Tour, L-A, first word, second word, T-U-R. La Tour is a Piemontese cheese. Piedmont in the northwest of Italy is particularly known for combining milks. So it's made from goat, sheep and cow's milk. And I promise you folks, this is like warm vanilla ice cream, this cheese. It's amazing. The only way to eat it is with a spoon and a glass of this.
That sounds amazing.
Well said. And Latour is a great cheese. So well said,
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah.
So
You mentioned Sharphams there, and of course Sharphams are one of the better known sparkling wine producers in the UK as well. So that kind of goes with what you've said to us before, that eat what the two things
what grows together goes together.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
right. Well, when you said rhubarb, Steve, I actually have a big rhubarb patch and strawberry patch here in Colorado, and so I've just harvested a ton of strawberries. The rhubarb is not quite there, but one of my favorite things growing up was a strawberry rhubarb pie with some vanilla ice cream, and so I'll be trying that out with this Pinot Noir sparkling.
Well, we've just got some rhubarb brought to us by a neighbour too, so that we'll definitely be doing that this weekend. Fantastic.
If you want to do something cool with rhubarb that would go really nicely with this, get some mackerel fillets, put them on top of some beetroot, and then just roast it for about 10 minutes. And it's really lovely. The fish and the rhubarb goes so well together. And a bottle of this. Good evening.
Mackerel, rhubarb.
Just laid on top of a bed of rhubarb.
And so just one little tidbit as well about this Pinot Noir sparkling. So we'll be trying 3 different ranges today. In our portfolio, we have over 24 different wines across 4 different ranges. So we have our estate, our reserve, our plata, and our oro. So plata is where the Pinot Noir theoretically fits in, and plata means silver in Spanish. And we decided to call plata plata and oro meaning gold our next tier up because of the gold buried on our property somewhere, supposedly it's a legend. It supposedly is in the historical archives, but plata meaning silver. Argentina derives from the Latin term argent, meaning silver. And it wasn't because of the silver mineral ore that they found in Argentina subsequently after it was conquered, but it's actually when the conquistadors were sailing up to the coast of Argentina, these large grasses, 6-foot pampa grasses, gave off a silver sheen, and that's how Argentina got its name. So most Argentines don't know their history about that. So it's just a fun little tidbit of, one of those trivia things you can ask. How did Argentina get their name?
Yeah, that's fascinating. And do you think there is a gold on your land?
There is. So one of the 2 original routes from Buenos Aires to Santiago, Chile, cuts right through the center of our vineyards. And so it's a 350-year-old abandoned road called the Camino del Rey, or the King's Road, so that only people of nobility were allowed to travel on. And there were a large Jesuit communities close to where our vineyards were. And so legend tells that there was some nobles being chased, some Spanish nobles being chased by some bandits. And in order to escape, they had to stop and bury the gold. And subsequently, the previous owners of our vineyard got out there with a backhoe and dug up all kinds of holes in our vineyards. We still come across them every once in a while. I don't believe they found the gold, and if they did, they didn't tell anybody, which would be smart. But the original farm manager of our vineyards, Don Cano, who's 93 years old now, has showed me this supposed olive tree, because we have over 1,100-plus-year-old olive trees on our property. He showed me the olive tree that's buried under, and I said, Don Cano, that's a very great story. It makes great for marketing, and everybody likes a good story, but I have a feeling if the gold was really there, I would have never met him, and he'd be living in the Bahamas drinking drinks with little umbrellas in them. So, again, we like the history, we like the legends, we like the story, but at the end of the day, the true treasure are the vines and the wines that they give us.
Yeah, that's really great fun. I have to tell you, this sparkling for me is a surprise out of Argentina. I always think of Argentinian wines being much more heavy. It was really not a very winemaker's description, but this is really light and refreshing and fruity. And I think it's not what I would expect from an Argentinian winery. So love it. Absolutely.
In part, that's because it's 100% Pinot Noir. As we can't be called a champagne because we're not in Champagne, it's a great sparkling. Typically, champagnes are, a base of Chardonnay with a little bit of Pinot Noir or Pinot Meunier. In this case, since we have the largest Pinot Noir vineyards in Argentina, we're able to, make 100% Pinot Noir sparkling at an affordable price. Because typically you can find 100% Pinot Noir champagnes, but they are pricey, And so another one of our mantras or our goals is always to make great wines for great prices. We don't want to tax your purse or your pocketbook just to drink a great wine. And I think that's in part, I love Barolos, but in part that's a disservice done, to the world is that they're quite expensive, So we want to make great wines across our whole portfolio for the price. So over deliver on the price point for the quality, or over deliver on the quality for the price point. And
is this made in the traditional champagne method, fermented in the bottle?
This is not. We have plans to make a traditional Champenois style sparkling. This is a method Charmat. But what we do differently is that we leave this on the lees for 90 days, as opposed to typical Charmats are 30 to 45 days. So we leave it on the lees a little bit longer just to give it a little more complexity and body through the mid palate, and give us a little more expression on the fruit.
So similar to a Prosecco, for example, but you leave it on the lees for longer. Okay.
Yeah, and that's really what we, it's got the open cage with our little kind of tag, I'll say, to compete with that, and try to compete in price point with Prosecco. Obviously, this seems sweet because it's 100% Pinot Noir, but this is less than 9 grams of sugar for the whole bottle. That's hence why it's an extra brut. But again, since it's Pinot Noir, it doesn't taste super dry, but it is quite dry.
And 12% alcohol. So just in case anybody out there doesn't understand what the lees are, explain a little bit about when you say leaving it on the lees for a little bit longer. That's the gunk that's left after you press the grapes, basically.
Yep, the yeast and all that at the bottom. That's when we drink a champagne. That's what gives it that bready kind of yeasty taste. Those are the lees. Okay, so we don't want to have a yeasty taste. We want to definitely express that nice, fresh fruit. But again, leaving it on the lees for 90 days as opposed to 30 days, you get a lot more complexity to the wine.
We're actually thinking about doing a sparkling wine tasting later in the year, where we actually compare, champagnes to a Cava, for example, a Prosecco, and a New World sparkling. So it'd be really interesting to compare the difference, because they are quite distinctive. This is a lot fresher. Personally, I prefer a fresher sparkling wine than a toasty. Some of the champagnes I find too musty, too toasty. This I prefer because it's light and fresh. So we're looking at doing a tasting like that later in the year, just so that people can see the differences between the different styles. That'd be great.
Well, and so we have 2 wines today that we're trying in that are some of the favorites of Steven Spurrier. So I don't know if all of you have seen the movie Bottle Shock. If you haven't, definitely watch Bottle Shock. It's basically how California wines got put on the map back in 1976. But meeting Steven Spurrier at the Decanter Fine Wine Encounter in London for the first time was a big cork dork kind of moment for me. And every year that we participate, he always makes sure to bring people to come over and try our sparkling Pinot Noir and our Petit Verdot. He's given us great points in the decanter in the past for both those wines, but both of those are some of his favorites, and especially the Petit Verdot, because we'll get there. But so we're drinking two wines that Steven Spurrier definitely has given us, great commentary about. And as a matter of fact, Andrew and Helen, when we met them the first time, they were a little bit hesitant to bring on our importers, CE Fine Wines. They loved the wine. They just didn't know how it would react in the UK market. And so Andrew always tells the story that, he brought in like 20 cases, and he had one of the newspapers there taste it, and they wanted to write it up and say, let's push this. And Andrew said, well, we can't do that yet because we don't have enough stock. But, we've been received very well in the UK, and I love getting out there as much as I can. I'm usually there between 2 and 4 times a year. Obviously, we'll see how this goes, but with the quarantine. But we'll get back to where we are, and I'll look forward to coming back to the UK, and maybe we can hold a personal tasting.
Exactly. That's what we're planning on doing. We'd really love to do that. And if we can do it as soon as this November, that would be fantastic. If not, as soon as we can in 2021.
Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Now, the next one we're going to taste is the Torrontés, which is, to some extent, alongside Malbec, the grape that Argentina really is probably best known for. Tends to only really be grown mainly in Argentina. I know there are some grown in some other parts of the world. It's called different things in different parts of the world. I only fairly recently realized that it's actually also known as Malvasia in Italy, for example. But Torrontés is really an Argentinian grape, isn't it?
Well, we like to say if Malbec is the king, then Torrontés is the queen. So the story that I heard is that this originates from Spain, but the vineyards were ripped up in Spain to plant other varietals that at the time were more marketable and more profitable. So just like Malbec taking on a whole new life in Argentina, so has Torrontés. So Torrontés is a cross-pollination between Muscat and Spanish Criolla or Sauvignon Blanc, depending on the clone and who you talk to. So there's 3 clones out there. 2 are Muscat, Moscato Alexandria, and Spanish Criolla. And then there's another one that's undefined, that's Muscat, and most people say Sauvignon Blanc. So this is a brain teaser wine in that it smells sweet like a Muscat. You're going to get those tropical floral notes, tropical fruit notes in the nose. It smells sweet like a Muscat, but it's going to finish dry, kind of like with those nice citric notes of a Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, you get real peachy, sort of apricot-y, but Muscat definitely, but very much ripe fruit.
Right, and I get some gardenia and lychee as well, some lemon peel on the back end. So, this actually is grown about 800 miles north of our winery, our main estate in Mendoza. This is coming from Cafayate Salta, which is considered to be the best zone or region for Torrontés. This is being grown at 2,000 meters on the side of the Andes Mountains. So we're moving closer to the equator, so we have to go higher up in elevation to get the aromatics and acidity that we're looking for in this wine. So since we went closer to the equator, we have to go higher up. The diurnal change between night and day, the big extremes gives us that nice acidity and those nice aromatics. This is also a great patio pounder, a good wine to watch your husband or boyfriend mow the lawn while you sit on the patio and watch him do that. Sorry, guys, for throwing you under the bus like that, but, somebody's got to mow the lawn and somebody's got to drink. So maybe, hopefully, she'll share with you afterwards. But no, it's a great wine. This is, it's kind of like it's been difficult to, I guess, have the reception that we were hoping for, because I love this wine. Some people can find that they can be overly aromatic in the nose, or they can have really bitter, real bitter end on the back end. Again, it comes down to taking care of your vines and when you harvest. So again, another advantage of Argentina is that we can pick when the grapes are ripe as opposed to when they're green or when they're too ripe. So that's the advantage that we have in Argentina, is we always get to pick the fruit when it's ripe. And then that allows us to be able to control, you know, some of those other factors. And again, another thing that we do is everything we make is 100% varietally correct, unless we designate otherwise. So when we say it's 100% Torrontés, it's not Torrontés with Chenin Blanc, or it's not Malbec with Bonarda. It's 100%. And we take great pride in that because there's a lot of opportunists in Argentina that in order to cut their costs, they'll put in a filler grape, and it does a true disservice to the variety. So I do know of other wineries that put in Chenin Blanc, and it changes the taste profile totally. So we take great pride in making sure everything that we do, unless other designated, because we do some great blends, but we tell you the percentage of the blends. We take great pride in making varietally correct wines.
You're absolutely right about how it smells quite sweet on the nose, but actually it's dry. It's a dry wine, and
it is. And so people that like Muscat will like this, and people like Sauvignon Blanc, we typically find like it as well. Again, it has great acidity. Acidity helps balance out any kind of spicy food, and I know Steve will have some great recommendations, but typically I think this goes really well with Thai curries or Indian curries. Mexican food, I usually have a margarita or a beer, but you know, anything that has a little bit of spice, this is going to help balance out some of that spice. So if you have something spicy, this is great, and before you know it, the bottle's gone.
Okay, Steve, I have a tapenade here. So is that going to be a good match?
I've never met anybody who has tapenade at their desk, but there you go. Eric and Essie, I'd like to congratulate you, because in 40 years in the wine business, I've never heard anybody say, I can smell gardenias. So excellent. Right, this wine is fabulous because it can take you through a whole meal. So I'll give you the whole meal here. Some of you may have come across something called ceviche or ceviche, which is basically when you take a raw fish and you, in inverted commas, cook it in a citrus juice, like you squeeze some lime over it or some lemon, and the acidity changes the protein structure of the fish in a way that it almost cooks it. So it's not like eating sashimi or something. So you could do this with some raw tuna, you could do it with some raw salmon, whitefish, anything, absolutely superb. And then just put some of the lime zest on it or something like that. So great little starter that I think would work beautifully with this wine. Eric knows, because we were exchanging communication last night, I researched this thoroughly, having only drunk about 100 bottles of it in my life. I thought I ought to try another one last night, and unfortunately it went very quickly, so I had to open another one tonight. So moving away from the ceviche as the starter, main course, Eric is absolutely on the money. Think Thailand, think chili, think lime, think coriander, think lemongrass, and most importantly, think peanuts and coconut milk. So you think of something like that. Don't go for a big hardcore Thai red curry, that's possibly a bit too far, but take any of that, take something like a massaman curry or something like that, absolutely beautiful with this. So anything Southeast Asian Thai, not really your sort of vindaloo type curries. The more delicate, fragrant flavors and things like that would be amazing with it. And finally, for a cheese course, well, a whole variety here of cheeses that really work well with this. And we discussed on one of these previous tastings a couple of weeks ago that even our French friend agreed with me that white wines work better with cheese than red wines in general. Now, if you looked towards what I know as Penny's favorite style of cheese, the Alpine cheeses, things like your Gruyères and Comtés and things like that work beautifully with this wine. But one that I would really recommend is a Swiss cheese called Appenzeller. If you get a chance to try Appenzeller, it's absolutely gorgeous. You would probably have to go to a proper cheese shop. If anybody on the call doesn't know where their nearest good cheese shops are, Penny can certainly advise you. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Appenzeller, exactly like that, Penny. And finally, some what I'd call washed rind cheeses, which are those cheeses that are naturally pinky orangey colour, bit sticky and slightly pungent. So examples are things like Langres from Burgundy, Roblechon from the French Alps, sort of Savoy area, Ardrahan from West Cork in Ireland, Maida Vale, which is a great new cheese, comes from Berkshire, and I know a lot of Waitrose cheese counters sell Maida Vale now. It's delicious. It's like an English version of a Vacherin Mont d'Or, if anybody's ever tried it, that sort of thing. And finally, one that I know you can definitely get in the Waitrose #1 range, which is a cheese you won't see around very much. It's called Lindum, Lindum, and it's made by a cheesemaker called Coat Hill, who are in Lincolnshire. So there you go, a whole meal and the perfect wine to go with it.
Thai curry, coconut milk curries is really interesting, because my normal go-to wine for something like that would be a Gewürztraminer or a Riesling. So
you're in the same family of flavors. So yeah.
So I think
there's a lot of people, since they don't know Toronto's, they'll say it's either Gewürztraminer or Gruner Veltliner or Viognier. They kind of end up in that kind of same kind of realm.
And you get the same sort of nose to palate differentiation as well, with the sort of really quite honeyed, peachy, muscatty, sweet nose, and then the dryness in the flavour. I think fantastic combination. So thank you both of you. That's some really good food pairings there. I think probably Steve, I need you to spell out some of those cheeses, so you can do that for me on the chat. That would be great. Can I just, again, show of hands, has anybody not tasted Toronto's before? Oh, okay, interesting. And good, thumbs up? Okay, no, that's it. I think it is one of those things. It's a bit like Gewürztraminer, where sometimes people like it. It is, you know, here we go again. It's a Marmite wine. It's a like it or loathe it wine. Interesting. Okay, now this is the one I've been really looking forward to, the Petit Verdot. Again, not a grape I would have necessarily associated with Argentina. Definitely Bordeaux, obviously. A lot of Bordeaux wines use Petit Verdot, but it's not something I would have necessarily thought of in Argentina. So explain why you're growing this, and what the terroir is. It obviously different to the Toronto's terroir. Tell us a little bit about where it's grown and why you chose this grape.
Yeah, sure. So this is coming from our main estate in Mendoza. It's in Barrancas, Maipú. We're in a special microclimate. We actually sit in the old alluvial floodplain of the Mendoza River. So lots of sandy, porous soils with tons of glacial deposits from the Andes Mountains. Again, so Petit Verdot, so again, Tiburcio Venegas brought a lot of these. He went to Bordeaux, collected this French rootstock, came back and planted in Argentina. And so I can't say that I had much to do with actually planting the vines, but Cabernet Franc is one of my favorite varietals. I'm a Francophile. And so you can find very good Malbec pretty much everywhere in Mendoza, but to find Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot, that's very difficult to find, especially great quality Petit Verdot or Cabernet Franc. So our youngest vines, Petit Verdot, turned 100 and I think we're 7 or 8 years old now. And our youngest Cab Franc is on 110. We have taken some of the rootstock and planted some new vineyards, but when we first started this is all coming from old vines. So we're drinking 100-plus-year-old vines here today. And so that's quite rare to be drinking vines that old. We have a couple vines on our property that are over 140 years old, and you know that they're still growing strong and producing fruit. Where in California, your average vineyard life is about 25 years due to Pierce's disease. And so one of the advantages that Argentina has is, again, with those 300 days of sunshine and having a dry, arid climate, is we don't have the same complications and problems that Europe has. So not necessarily Spain, but definitely France and to some degree Italy, where you have cooler climates, you have more humidity or rainy days. And so therefore, in France, for example, you have to pick green. You have to pick before they're ripe. And so if you ever tried a Malbec or a Cabernet Franc or a Petit Verdot, they tend to be very herbaceous, tannic, astringent, mouth puckering, and unbearable to drink. And so as you mentioned, Penny, Malbec, Cabernet Franc, and Petit Verdot have always been used in small percentages as a blending grape in your Bordeaux left or right bank blends. Again, the great thing about having those 300 days of sunshine is we get to show you the great fruit that these varieties have that have never really truly been experienced elsewhere in the world. And so there's very few wineries in the world that actually make a straight up 100% Petit Verdot. You know, even here in the United States, they're hard to find. They're starting to become more and more popular. For a while, and we make great Malbecs, and we have the ratings to go with them. But you know, for a while there, we were known for our Pinot Noir Sparkling, our Petit Verdot, and our Cabernet Franc. Michel Rolland, a famous traveling winemaker from France, has come to our vineyard. Says that we have 4 clones, 1 Malbec, or 4 clones of Cabernet Franc, 1 of Petit Verdot, and 1 of Malbec that are unique to our vineyard in the world. Again, because Tiburcio Benegas brought those from France, you know, over 100 plus, almost, you know, a long time, almost 200 years ago. So we're fortunate that, you know, we have this great old vine rootstock that continues to produce great, you know, great wines. Small quantities, small production yield obviously gives us more concentration of fruit. You know, you get that spice, that dark berry fruit. You know, this is a wine that typically in Argentina we're going to pair with lamb or with goat. Just nice savory wine, really well balanced. This spends 10 months in French, American, and Hungarian oak barrels. This is going to be second and third use barrels. Just to round out the tannins a little bit, with all our wines, we want to express the fruit first and foremost and have the oak be a contributing factor for complexity. We never want to have you taste the oak. You know, if you want to lick a 2x4 or a plank of wood, go lick a plank of wood. We'd rather you taste the grapes and the grapefruit characteristics that come along with that. So, you know, again, as I mentioned, this is another one of Steven Spurrier's, you know, as I understand it, he might have changed by now, but as of a couple of years ago, this is one of his favorite Petit Verdots. Typically, Petit Verdot in the United States, if it's 100%, are very expensive. But again, we want to make great quality wines for a great price point that everybody can enjoy. You know, you, again, don't have to break your pocketbook to enjoy it.
Now you mentioned Hungarian oak there. Now you're probably one of the few wineries that I've come across. I'm looking at Helen here, who maybe has used Hungarian oak.
Well, there's only 2 types of oak. There's American oak or French oak. So this is French oak. It's Quercus, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's grown in Hungary. So it's a French oak varietal grown in Hungary. It has really tight grains, not as tight as, tight tannins or tight grains as France, but they're not inexpensive. We use a neutral Hungarian oak. What we find is this allows us to gain the tannic structure of the body we're looking for without compromising the fruit. Again, we want to show the fruit. I'm a level 3 sommelier, and when I went through my first song class, we were learning about oak, and you know, we've tried Italian oak, we've tried Slovenian oak. Hungarian oak always, you know, caught my attention. So when we first started making wine, we're all a pretty young winemaking team down in Argentina, and you know, one of the things that I brought was to kind of open the vision of oak in Argentina. We were the first people to use Hungarian oak in Argentina. Typically, it's always American and French, and a lot of more experienced winemakers, older winemakers. I typically try not to use those words. My mom would get on my butt about that. But more experienced winemakers typically always stay with French and American oak because they have the blinders on. That's the way it's always been made. You know, this is how you do it. You don't go off, you know, the broken path. But Gauchos make their own path, and so we've kind of pioneered Hungarian oak. It's becoming more and more common. You know, and we've also tried other oaks, you know, whether that's American oak or French oak varieties grown in different regions, just to see the kind of characteristics that they will give us. But again, our goal is to always, you know, show the fruit and give the complexity with the oak.
Now, you mentioned that you would drink this with goat. That's not usually on the menu over here very often. However, no. I know that you quite often roast a goat at the end of harvest. I know the Spanish do this in Rioja as well. At the end of harvest, big traditional supper, and it's usually roasted goat. You actually told us earlier that you don't do that in Gauchezco. You tend to do a pig. But I think a lot of people do spit roast a whole goat at the end of harvest. So I see this going really well with that.
This would also go really well with venison. You know, obviously you don't want to eat anything too gamey. I eat a lot of gamey meat, but I probably live on the far spectrum of carnivores. So for me, it doesn't technically ever bother me too much. But, you know, I've had some great venison from New Zealand with this, and it was superb. You know, again, goat, lamb, you know, also goes very well with lamb. You can never go wrong with the steak, you know, but we'll kind of leave Malbec and steak for next week. But, you know, I'm sure Steve has some great food pairing ideas as well.
Definitely. I'm thinking about New Zealand venison. We have some people from Scotland here who I think would argue that venison is best from there. But
I would not disagree.
Steve, goat, venison,
Well,
lamb.
talking of where things are best from, next time you're over here, Eric, as well as having a bit of fun and a meal together, I'm going to take you out and show you there's another country that grows oak trees as well as France and the US. We've got a few.
I know you guys have a ton, so
I think we invented it actually, but we made warships out of it.
That's right. You'll take me to Sherwood Forest next time I'm there.
Too fast drive. No, seriously, when it comes to eating with Petit Verdot, what you need here is full flavour. Just think flavour, not strength necessarily. And Eric's absolutely right. When you've got your tomahawk steaks and your T-bones and things like that, and your big gamey meats, save them for your Malbecs or your Cab Sauves. With something like the Petit Verdot, lamb absolutely bang on, but I would tend to go for the more delicate cuts of lamb. So I'd go for like a rack or a cannon of lamb or noisettes, those type of things, the more delicate. In game, yes, absolutely, but I'd stick to game birds rather than game animals. So, you know, your pigeons, your grouse, things like that. Smoked meats, particularly. There's two flavors I always get with this Petit Verdot. I don't know whether Eric agrees or not. One is pencil shavings. It's like when you chew a pencil.
Graphite, yep.
Yeah. And the other one is, and looking around the room, most people seem to be over 21. So you'll remember Parma violets. Those lovely little sweets we get. And I think this has got a really delicate sort of Parma violet type flavour. It's an English confectionery, Eric, that we used to have years ago. Another thing that I think goes really well with this, and I suspect the Cowboy and Eric will appreciate this one, which is mole. If you've never had a mole, which is basically a chocolate chili sauce, which normally you can use as a base to make something like a really good chili. So mole, I think, would go really nicely with this. The balance of the sweetness, and that's spelled M-O-L-E.
The bitter notes of that chocolate, I agree. I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, so mole.
I'm closer to mole country than you guys are, so.
Yeah. When it comes to cheeses, well, this is a wine that's made for Stilton, without any doubt at all. Something that's nice and blue, not too strong. I wouldn't have it with like a Roquefort or something like that, but something like a Stilton, perfect. If you fancy Stilton with a twist, Stilton can only be made in Leicestershire, Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, and can only be made from pasteurised milk. And there's only actually 6 people who make Stilton in the world. So there you go, a bit of trivia for you. But there's a guy, an American guy actually, called Joe Schneider, who set up a dairy on the Welbeck estate in Nottinghamshire, and he makes a raw milk version of Stilton. But because it's raw milk, he can't legally call it Stilton. So he looked in the history books and found the village of Stilton back in the Middle Ages was called Stitchelton. So he named this cheese Stitchelton. So it's a bit of a dig, if you like, at the Stilton rules. But Stitchelton is gorgeous. It's like Stilton, but slightly creamier, little bit more intense, little softer on the palate, but really, really nice. Smoked cheeses. Yes, get a smoked cheese to go with this, But this is Parker's top tip on smoked cheese. Make sure you buy smoked cheese, not smoke flavored cheese. There's one that I can't name, but let's say if you thought of orange wood or pear wood or cherry wood, you'd be close, but a different fruit, which is probably a nice cheese in itself, but it's smoke flavored. They've literally put some E numbers in there to give it a flavor. What you want here is a cheese that has been cold smoked, a properly smoked one. There are some great ones around, or any full flavored cheese. So if you take sort of Eric's third favorite country in the world, you know, something like your Asiagos or some strong provolones or Fontina or stuff like that, you know, any of these cheeses would work nicely with this wine. So you've got a whole world of choice there. And Eric, I love this wine every time I try it, more and more each time. It's brilliant.
I do. Yeah, you know, we make great wines, Malbec, of course, and you're expected probably to make a great Malbec from Argentina. Although you have to be careful because, again, there are those opportunists that will drop in Bernarda and just even a small amount. It's one of my pet peeves. We'll drop in a little bit of Bernarda in a Malbec, and then you get that cherry cola, really tannic kind of Malbec, which obviously we don't like. But you know, the Petit Verdot and the Cabernet Franc were the reason that we went ahead and purchased the vineyard that we did, my father and I. So again, family-run winery. You know, real attention to detail, and we have a great team down there. Mauricio Orsverk is our winemaker. His wife is the second winemaker of Zuccardi, she's made 100-point wines. So I have a feeling that Mauricio is gunning for her and wants to even the kill, so to speak. You know, balance it out. So no, we make great wines. You know, we'd love to have you down in Argentina when you guys can come down there if you ever want to come. As I mentioned in the comments, you know, if you have any questions about Argentina, please let me know. Because although we're located in Mendoza, you know, we have great contacts all over Argentina as well. And you know, I love the UK. I'm also a whiskey fanatic. I have to be careful not to spend too much on whiskey, especially with the 25% tax that we have here now. But you know, love getting over to the UK as much as I can.
Eric,
we'd love to have you, Eric, and we'll certainly try and organise when we can a face-to-face tasting, which I think is something we'd really like to do with Ben and Dan, both of whom you know and love. But I think really the Cabernet. Somebody's asking me here. Rain and Kevin are asking about the Cabernet Franc. We don't have that on the tasting next week, but it's certainly something we should be looking at. I agree. I think Cabernet Franc is a fascinating grape. Robin, who's on the tasting tonight, introduced me to white Cabernet Franc a couple of years ago, which was a revelation to me. Absolutely amazing, and made a fantastic sparkling wine as well. So Cabernet Franc's a fantastic grape. So we really need to be looking at that one as well. So
it is the father of Cabernet Sauvignon. So Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc is what created Cabernet Franc. Or no, I'm sorry, Cab Sav.
Just quickly going back very quickly to the Petit Verdot, one of the tasting notes you put on this is chocolate. Now, Steve, you'll know that chocolate is one of the hardest things to match wine with because it kind of coats the whole of the roof of your mouth and you can't taste anything. Would you consider this as a good chocolate accompaniment?
Yes, but I would disagree with the comment. Sorry, Penny, you're the boss, I know. But
Right.
chocolate is not difficult to pair with wine. English proprietary brands of chocolate are difficult to pair with wine.
Okay, proper
So,
chocolate.
much as we all enjoy a Galaxy or a Cadbury's Dairy Milk or a Yorkie bar, these things are like 30% cocoa solids. So it's not really chocolate. It's like a confectionery. It's too sweet. It's got too much sugar in. But if you get real chocolate, you know, proper stuff, and people like Green and Blacks make it, and Lindt and things like this. But you know, you want to be going.
Other brands are available.
Yeah, 50, 60, 70% cocoa solids. You can really do some stuff. I sometimes, and I'll talk to you about this another time, Penny, do this amazing sort of tasting experience where you take things like chili chocolate and sea salt chocolate and things like that and pair them with wines. Yes, absolutely on this one.
Okay,
Well, that comes back to your point about mole sauces, Steve. You know, which you know, you the sweetness of the Petit Verdot will help balance out that bitterness of that mole sauce or a chocolate.
Sounds fantastic.
just for everyone's benefit, Eric can't say this because he's far too modest. Last time Eric was over, him and I visited a really cool bar in London that was lovely and sold some great wines. But they'd made a decision to put in let's say, a very economic-driven decision on Malbec. That it was cheap. And Eric and I tasted it, and it's exactly what Eric said, that they chucked some Bernarda in there, and it just tasted like cherry cola, which I'd never really thought of before, but Eric pointed it out. And it's just such an inferior product. So I know we're covering it next week. When it comes to buying Malbec, buy a good one. And the top tip on that is buy a Gauchezco one.
That posh place actually charged more for their Malbec, which has Bernarda in it and tastes inferior, as you said, in my opinion, than just to continue with ours. So that's an unfortunate, but they want to make their margin, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to taste your Malbec next week alongside the Chardonnay, so I'm looking forward to both of those next week, definitely. Tonight, I would say my favourite is the Petit Verdot. Lindsay?
I think
my studio guest.
I think mine was the pink sparkling.
Okay, pink sparkling.
I thought it was really nice because I'm the same as you. Like with champagne, we're a bit like it's a bit funny,
but it's a bit fresh.
Yeah. It was
okay,
really nice.
So we've got two different wines as our favourites. Can I have a show of hands for the pink sparkling? Okay, good. Yeah, Carol. And the Torontos. And the Petit Verdot. I'm sure some of you have put your hands up twice, but hey, that's
I was going to say I'd have to put my hands up every time, so I just.
Well, that just goes to show that a good wine is the one that you enjoy, and everybody's got a different taste, and I think we've all got as shown tonight, everybody's got a different favourite, so that's fantastic.
I think
go ahead.
I think that's spot on. Is always drink what you like, and don't let anybody tell you differently. So you'll go to your local liquor store, or you go to a restaurant, and those sommeliers or those sales reps are typically going to push what they like.
Exactly.
But do not be afraid to tell them, no, that's not what I like. And you can tell them, these are certain types of wines I like, and then maybe they can help steer you in the right direction. But never be afraid to drink what you like. Always drink what you like.
And
whether that's a $5 wine or a $500 wine. If you're drinking $500 wine, invite me, or a $5 wine for that matter. But always drink what you like.
And also, don't be afraid to send it back, especially if it's too cold, or with the white wine's too cold, or even the red wine's too cold. I've sent a wine back on many occasions because I think it's not been stored properly. So I think people do get a little bit nervous about that, but never be afraid to do that. And if you don't like it, send it back too.
Well, when we finally get to go back to restaurants, now in Texas, they never shut the restaurants. Of course, now they're having more issues, but in Texas, all the restaurants are packed. But that being said, always smell your wine glass before they pour the wine.
Absolutely.
Because that could be you could have a great bottle of wine, and if the wine glass is dirty because they used a wet rag or they left too much soap residue in the glass, it will throw a great bottle of wine. And so always smell your glass. If your glass smells funny, ask for a new glass.
And I think also even at home, if you're storing them in a wooden cabinet, for example, they can get the taint of the wood cabinet. So always put them on the table for a couple of hours beforehand, so to allow as my father used to say, to let the stink out. And I think that's a really good expression. Yeah. So does anybody else have any more questions? If you do, unmute yourself. I don't want to unmute you all, but if you could unmute yourself one by one, that would be great. If anybody's got any other questions or comments. I can see, Rodney, you're chattering away. Your guests are chattering away there. What comments have you got? Can I unmute you? No, you'd have to unmute yourselves.
Oh, there you go.
Hello.
There you
Hello.
go.
Good evening.
Hello. Hi.
That was great. Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Good. Well, from your accents, I can tell that you're obviously north of the border. So Scottish venison tonight with this?
Definitely.
Oh, definitely.
Off the barbecue.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I must admit, I did make a slight mistake tonight. I thought we were trying the Malbec.
Oh, no.
So I've opened the Malbec.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the Malbec since you have it open. So this is our reserve Malbec. So this is a blend between two climate zone Malbecs. So our main estate in Barrancas, Maipú, in the old alluvial floodplain of the Mendoza River, a warmer or a hotter climate zone, and then we go south and up the mountains of the Andes in the Uco Valley, so a cooler climate zone. And so that way we take the best of both worlds, a warm climate zone and a cool climate zone, still 100% Malbec, and we put them together. The cooler climate zone areas is going to give you a thicker skin on the berries. It's going to add more color and more depth, a little more complexity. You're going to get more of that dark fruit. For me, I get some of that, nice dark berry fruit in the Malbec. I also get a little violet and spice, and obviously goes great with a steak. And I've had some great Scottish steaks up there. And there's two places I would move in the world right now. One is Cusco, Peru, and the other one I'd move to Edinburgh in a heartbeat. I love Edinburgh, and I'm a big Speyside fan, so I drink a lot of whiskey when I'm not drinking wine.
We've got other Edinburghites here as well tonight, which is fantastic. Great, thank you so much, Eric. Thank you very much, Steve. Next week we are doing the Chardonnay and the Malbec. We might just open the other sparkling as well if everybody's got that left next week. I might certainly keep it till next week and open it next week too. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us again. We're just planning a few more tastings out. We've got New Zealand on the 9th of July with your friend Dan from Tohu in New Zealand, Eric. And then we are looking at an amazing South African winery, Arataxia. It's taken me quite a long time to learn to say that, with a guy called Kevin Grant, who's very much into his soil. He calls himself the soil man, not the wine man. And then
that's where wines come from.
Exactly. And then we're looking at Rioja in Spain, and then we're going to go to Austria. Now, interestingly enough, I had a text from a friend of mine last night who I thought was quite intelligent, saying Austrian wines, ? And I thought, absolutely, some amazing Austrian wines out there, Pinot Noirs, Rieslings, Grüne Veltlingers, and we're doing them all. And in fact, we're going to do a dessert wine from Austria, which I've been reliably informed by the winemaker there is also very good in cocktails. So I'm absolutely fascinated to hear what she's got to say on our Austrian tasting. So we've got lots more coming up. Eric, we'll see you next week, and we really hope to see you in the UK as soon as we possibly can, and we'll organise a proper face-to-face tasting. Thank you so much for this evening, and cheers, everybody. Enjoy whichever one you're going to take away.
That's right. Well, I put my email address in there, eric@Gauchezco, really easy.com. So if any of you have any questions about our wines or Argentina in particular, please don't hesitate to get a hold of me. I've lived down there I guess I've been down there now for 14 years, so I can bring a different perspective as being a tourist down there. And, have lots of great friends down there. So if there's other wineries you're curious about, let me know. I usually know somebody in that winery, but I hope you guys enjoyed the wines.
We did.
You've now drank the Petit Verdot was over 100-year-old vines that you drank, and you tried something that most people have not tried with the Petit Verdot. The Torrontés, again, not many people know of Torrontés, but now you do. And you can never go wrong with some bubbles.
Absolutely, you're quite right.
It's kind of like bacon. Everything's better with bacon. Everything's better with bubbles.
So true. I love that. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Cheers, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.
Take care. Bye-bye.